A few years back, I was manning the front desk at a hotel in Iceland. Middle of winter. Real winter. Wind howling. Visibility close to zero. An American couple marched down furious because their sightseeing tour had been canceled due to a severe blizzard. The woman leaned over the counter and said, completely serious, "This is unacceptable. We came here for the Northern Lights. Can't you call the authorities and shut the storm down for a couple of hours?" Then she added that line I still remember. "In America, we have systems for this." She wasn't joking. In her mind, weather was a customer service issue. A close friend of mine grew up in South Africa and later studied in Ohio. One evening, her roommate asked her what language people speak where she's from. My friend explained that the country has multiple official languages and that she personally speaks English and Zulu. The roommate blinked, confused, and replied, "But you're white. How do you speak African?" My friend tried to explain, patiently, that languages aren't assigned by race. After 30 minutes, the roommate was still stuck on the same thought. African equals black. End of discussion. I once guided a group of American university students through Pompeii. We were standing among the ruins, surrounded by ash-frozen streets and plaster casts of people who never made it out. One student looked around and asked, "Did anyone warn them this would happen?" I said no. He frowned. "So why didn't they call emergency services?" I had to explain that phones, let alone 911, wouldn't exist for another 18 centuries. He shook his head and said, "That's wild. No wonder it went so badly." On a flight crossing the Atlantic, I sat beside an American businessman headed to London. As the plane descended, he smiled and said he was excited to finally see where the Queen lives, the Tower of London. I gently corrected him. He confidently pushed back. According to him, Buckingham Palace was just a seasonal place, and the Tower was the main royal residence. Movies had taught him that. Even when I pulled up the official royal website, he dismissed it. They wouldn't put the real one online. When my cousin married an American woman, she came to visit our family in the Irish countryside. She was fascinated by the sheep roaming freely across the fields. Later that evening, she asked my uncle what we do with them after dark. Did we gather them up? Lock them inside? My uncle said no. They stay where they are. Her face dropped. "What about predators?" she asked. "Lions? Bears?" We had to explain that Ireland doesn't have either. I also worked for a time at a fine dining restaurant in Paris. One night, an American couple ordered an extremely expensive Bordeaux. When the sommelier approached with the bottle, the man waved him away and said, "It's fine, just pour it." 2 oversized glasses. Load them with ice. That was the order. The sommelier just stood there, motionless, like his brain had hit a blue screen. He gently tried to explain that expensive red wine isn't meant to be drowned in ice cubes. The guy didn't even let him finish. "Relax," he said. "I bought it. If I want to turn it into a frozen cocktail, you'll bring the ice. That's normal where I'm from, California." The conversation was over before it even started. While studying in Scotland, I knew an American exchange student who tried to buy a train ticket to London. He came back from the ticket booth absolutely livid. Apparently, the clerk was trying to scam him. Why? Because the price was listed in pounds. He proudly told the clerk he was American and wanted to pay in dollars. When they refused, he took it personally. To him, it wasn't about currency, it was discrimination. In his mind, a global economy should naturally revolve around American money. I once joined a guided tour at the pyramids of Giza. One woman in our group kept raising her hand, each question stranger than the last. Finally, she gestured toward the hieroglyphs and said, "They're beautiful, but where's the English version?" She genuinely wondered why the ancient Egyptians didn't think ahead and include English translations for future visitors. From her perspective, the lack of an English option was just bad planning and poor usability. My sister worked as a cashier in a Toronto supermarket. One afternoon, an American customer stared at his total, $28.50, like it was a personal attack. "That's insane," he said. "I barely bought anything. Why are your taxes so high?" She explained that Canadian prices already include tax. That only made things worse. "That makes no sense," he snapped. "How do you even know what you're paying? In America, the price is the price. until the government steals from you later. This feels dishonest. I once overheard a conversation in a cafe in Vienna. A teenage girl from the US was complaining to her mom that Europe was painfully boring. Everything, according to her, was ancient. The buildings, the art, even the music. She said it felt like innovation died centuries ago. Then she asked why they couldn't go somewhere exciting, like the Mall of America, where at least there's a roller coaster. Her mom agreed. Europe, she said, was cute, just not modern. I also spent time working at a bike rental shop in Amsterdam. One American tourist walked in and asked if we had bikes with automatic transmission. I explained that our bikes use internal gears and are designed to be simple. He shook his head. No, he said slowly. I mean, automatic, like a car. I don't want to deal with gears, he told me, completely serious. That's too much thinking while riding. He explained that back home bikes basically do everything for you, and that Amsterdam should really rethink its setup if it hopes to appeal to American tourists. Apparently, the city just wasn't optimized for his comfort. When I worked at a pub in Dublin, a group of Americans asked me for the most Irish beer we had. I said Guinness. One guy recoiled like I'd insulted him. No chance, it's way too dark. It looks like something you'd pour into a car. Then he asked if we had green beer instead. Because Ireland. He said they drink green beer every St. Patrick's Day in the States, so he assumed we'd have it permanently. He looked genuinely disappointed, like Ireland had failed a branding promise. I was once on a bus in Florence when an American woman started ranting loudly on her phone. She was furious about the traffic. According to her, Italians drive on the wrong side of the car, and the steering wheel placement made everything unsafe. She said they should switch to the American way because it's the global standard and just logical. I had to sit there silently while she complained about a problem that didn't actually exist. At the British Museum, I watched an American tourist study the Rosetta Stone for a while, then waved down an employee. He asked if this was the same Rosetta Stone he uses to learn languages on his phone. When told yes, but not that way, he asked why anyone would store it as a massive rock. Seems inefficient, he said. The app fits in my pocket. The staff member stared at him for a moment, then quietly walked off. A Canadian friend of mine was taking a history course at a U.S. college. During a lecture on the War of 1812, a student raised his hand, confused. He couldn't understand why Americans would attack Canada if they were fighting Britain. When the professor explained that Canada was under British rule, the student still wasn't convinced. Feels unnecessary, he said, like attacking your neighbor because you're mad at someone else. Later on, I worked night shifts at a hotel in Queenstown, New Zealand. One night, around 3 in the morning, an American guest called the front desk in a panic. He said something was wrong outside. When I asked what, he whispered, "The moon." Apparently, it was upside down. The crescent was facing the wrong direction. He kept whispering into the phone like we were about to be arrested. That doesn't make sense, he said. The moon is wrong. Is it a reflection? Are we inside some kind of dome? I explained, as calmly as I could, that being in the southern hemisphere changes how the moon appears. That didn't reassure him. He lowered his voice and said he was pretty sure someone was lying to us. I once met an American couple on their honeymoon in Thailand at an elephant sanctuary. After the tour, the wife smiled and asked the guide if they had any elephants that were smaller, like puppy-sized. She said she'd seen a video online of a tiny elephant, so she knew they existed, and she'd happily pay extra to take one home. The guide had to explain, slowly, that miniature elephants are not a real thing. On a train in Japan, the conductor came through checking tickets. An American man across from me handed over his passport instead. The conductor, confused, asked for his ticket again. The man repeated himself, louder this time. American passport. Then he turned to his friend and said the guy had to let him ride for free because of some post-World War II agreement. When the conductor still didn't comply, security escorted him off at the next stop. During an international politics class at the London School of Economics, a student confidently argued that the United Nations headquarters in New York was technically American territory. His logic was simple. It's in New York, therefore it belongs to the U.S. That meant, in his view, all other countries were guests, and America should have the final word in every UN decision. No amount of explanation changed his mind. I worked at a cafe in Sydney where an American tourist ordered a regular coffee. I asked what he meant. Espresso, flat white, long black. He looked offended. No, he said, regular coffee, from a pot. I explained that we don't really do drip coffee like that. He sighed dramatically and said he couldn't believe how far behind the country was. It's the 21st century, he said. How do you not have normal coffee? In a small German town where my family lives, an American tourist tried to pay for a loaf of bread with a $100 bill. When the baker explained they only accept euros, the man got irritated. He pointed at the bill and said it was worth way more than the bread. Refusing it, in his opinion, was bad business. This is the world's currency, he said. You'd never last in America. On a walking tour of old Quebec City, a woman from Texas complimented the French signs. Then she asked where the English ones were. Was there an English section of the city they could visit instead? She said it felt a bit unfair to not have everything available in English. She explained to the guide that tourists spend serious money, so the least a city could do is make street signs readable. It felt unfair to her that everything wasn't in English. The guide just smiled politely and said, "Ma'am, you are already in the English-speaking part." That answer didn't seem to satisfy her. When I lived in Madrid, my American roommate nearly panicked after discovering our kitchen sink didn't have a garbage disposal. She asked what we do with leftover food. When I said we throw it away, she looked horrified. Wasn't that gross? What about animals? I explained the concept of trash bags and bins. She was convinced Europe was decades behind and actually wrote to the landlord demanding he install a proper American sink. At a beach resort in Mexico, I watched an American guest complain to management that the ocean water was too salty. He said he accidentally swallowed some while swimming and found it disgusting. At resorts in Florida, according to him, the water isn't like that. He suggested the hotel filter the ocean for guest comfort. He paid for luxury, after all. In his mind, the hotel was responsible for the taste of the sea. I once worked in a souvenir shop near Buckingham Palace. An American tourist walked in and asked if we sold tickets to meet the Queen. When I said that wasn't how it worked, he asked if meeting a prince was an option instead. He wasn't picky. He just wanted a selfie with a royal. He asked how much it would cost and said his budget was around $200, as long as it was quick. During a History of England class at Oxford, an American student raised his hand and asked why England went through so many kings and queens. It seemed chaotic to him. Why didn't they just hold elections every 4 years like the US? He said it sounded like they were improvising the entire system. The professor paused, then replied that democratic republics weren't exactly popular in the 8th century. On a flight to Rome, an American passenger argued with a flight attendant about the in-flight movie. The film was Italian, with English subtitles. He insisted it was an American movie because he'd seen it back home. Therefore, it should be in English. Subtitles, in his opinion, were unacceptable. The argument on the plane just wouldn't die. The man kept insisting the movie was wrong. The actors, according to him, were obviously meant to be speaking English, and someone had messed it up. He demanded the original version. The flight attendant calmly explained that this was an Italian airline, so Italian was the default. He stared at her like she'd just made that rule up personally. At the Acropolis in Athens, I heard an American tourist tell the guide that the ruins were impressive but clearly unfinished. He asked if there were plans to wrap things up at some point. Maybe clean the marble, maybe add a roof. Glass, preferably. Modern, tasteful. He said, where he's from, no homeowners association would ever allow something this old to just sit there exposed. A friend of mine works at a small restaurant high in the Swiss Alps. An American family came in, and the first thing the father asked for was the Wi-Fi password. A few minutes later, he waved my friend over, irritated. The internet was slow. Could he reboot something? Call someone? They were trying to stream a football game. He explained that reliable, high-speed internet was essential if you wanted to operate a business, even in the mountains. While visiting a friend in Japan, I spent an afternoon at a quiet temple in Kyoto. Everything there felt still and deliberate. An American tourist showed up with his family, talking at full volume. He walked straight up to a monk who was meditating and tapped him on the shoulder. Then he asked if the monk could take a photo of his family. He gave specific instructions about the angle, asked him to include the roof, and requested it be quick. They had dinner plans. The monk looked at him with absolute calm and total disbelief.